We can kick off. We're going to kick off with one ask. If you find this interesting and helpful, please get the word out for tomorrow. Okay. So I'm obviously Jennifer Lindsay. I'm not Nate.
I'm Nate Clayburgh with the CAPS National Network.
Yes. So we wanted to speak with you today about the CAPS network, which already exists and could be another conduit to the talent pipeline in our industry. So I'm with Corbion, and we service not only the baking industry, but the meat, protein industry, snack industry, beverage industry. And every single time I go to conferences, there is always an item on the agenda, and it's about the talent pipeline. And everybody is having the same issue, that the demand is not met with an adequate supply of talent. So just by raise of hands of you guys in here, how many of you, when you were in junior high or high school, said, yep, I'm going to be a baking scientist, engineer in the baking industry, food scientist? By raise of hands, is that what you set out to do? If that is you, that is really cool. Okay? Did the rest of you kind of fall into it? Right. I fell into it. I was that kid that was going to go to medical school. Obviously, I didn't. And I was recruited by the Dean of Agriculture to go to this Food Science 101 course. And the first thing out of my mouth, can any of you guess what the first thing out of my mouth was when the Dean of Agriculture said, why don't you go and take the Food Science 101 course? You just shout out. No, I said, I don't want to be a chef. Yeah. It's the furthest thing from that. And my children will tell you that too. I am not the chef, but we can talk about the biochemistry of food all day long. So this is important because we usually talk about how to solve the dearth of talent in our talent pipeline by what? The same ways of working. How do we get them attracting to our industries from the universities? Or how can we get more people into the trade schools to fulfill what we need in manufacturing? When you talk to kids today, they don't necessarily even know what food science is or baking science. They think it's more of a culinary class or engineering. So we're going to start off and introduce you with a short video to what the CAPS program is.
Traditional education and kind of how our system has worked over the decades, change is slow. We had to find a new way, we had to find a better way.
I wouldn't say school is easy, but the structure of school had always been easy for me. But what I've realized is there's no syllabus for life.
I've never been told I was stupid, but it's just I've always just told myself that because I've had like data just F after F after F to say so, and now I have something to say against that.
Does school really show your talent or how much you're worth?
I believe that we all have our individual pursuits and passions that we have a duty to share with the world.
Us being in the leadership role of you can do this, or having people motivate us and that you can do this, not just, oh, you're just too young because you're still in high school.
I think the adult world will be shocked by what high school kids, what they're capable of if they're given the chance to do real things.
That opens up a whole world. Isn't that the dream that every teacher has for their students, is that your students become productive members of society and really go out and make a mark on the world?
By saying, I belong here and I'm willing to learn, you show that you're flexible and you're ready and you're tough and you're not afraid of challenges.
I think they expect me to work hard myself as an independent person, because when the pressure is at yourself, that's motivation, but when the pressure is from outside, that's just stress.
I'm now in a place where I feel like I almost have the advantage because you don't have to graduate high school to kickstart your life, you can just do it right here.
So quick little comment about this video, and then I'm going to ask Nate to cover off this slide. What you just saw was actually also led by the students at CAPS. They co-developed that and worked with a real company who is in the industry of video production, but that was their input. So they were part of bringing that whole message and that whole production together. And you notice experiential learning, that's the key. And what CAPS offers is profession-based learning. So Nate?
So CAP started Blue Valley, Kansas School District, which I think then was probably 3 or 4 high schools in Johnson County, Overland Park, Kansas. Very affluent district. Most students went on to a 4-year degree post-secondary. The school board was doing some evaluation some years, this has been probably 15 to 18 years ago, and saw that the students were coming back or they were hearing struggles to then evolve into the workforce. And they were looking together and they challenged the superintendent at the time to come up with a program that was going to connect more students to engage with industry and have an industry engaging with the school. So that's where CAPS came from, which stands for the Center for Advanced Professional Studies. So that was, like I said, started 15 years ago. And when you start doing something different, especially in education, which like most industries, people are looking at taking notice of that. And how do you do that? How do we do that? So our executive director, Corey Moen, would get asked to go speak at conferences and things like that. And schools from across the country would start coming in to see, how do we do this? And evolved into, well, what would a CAPS national network look like to grow this and have every student have the possibility to have these types of experiences that are happening not just in Overland Park, but started having these concentrations that started happening organically across the country in Utah, in the St. Louis area, obviously in Kansas City. I got involved in CAPS about 8 years ago. My background is not education, it's economic development. I was brought in to make connections with existing companies to the Cedar Falls School District in this CAPS program. I thought it was going to be a short-term thing. And here I am. Now I work for the national network and I get to speak in Washington, D.C. and all sorts of places across the country and connect business to what this is. So I was very passionate about workforce and the challenges that you all know about and we've all seen for over a decade, pushing 15 years when we knew this was coming, of when I could see education and business together, supporting one another and the infinite possibilities that it can be for each one, also their community. I'm like, sign me up. So as we evolve along, 115 programs now, and that's gone up 15 here just in the last 2 months, of programs across the country. So there are public schools, private schools, charter schools. We're evolving into some online learning communities that Pearson Ed Education has. We've had some conversations with some homeschooled partnerships and associations, but that's 170 plus school districts. Some are multi-high schools. So Blue Valley has, I think, 6, 7 high schools now. I know we just added one in in Utah that is going to serve 5 high schools and 3 districts. But that's 20. It's actually 25 states now that we are involved in, and we also have affiliations with a private school outside of Toronto, and also in Kuwait, and also with a girls' school in Kenya. And we got connected to that girls' school in Kenya. We are a 2-time 100 global education organization that we've been named, and that's out of Finland, that we were honored, and that's how we got connected to Kenya. So this all-girls school, where pathways in Kenya are limited, they're working with them to develop durable skills and some pathways that they have, which I think leads into the next slide.
Right.
That, be able to support and also innovate.
Quick call out on the Edison Awards and the 100. So the 100, of which CAPS has been recognized twice, that's out of approximately globally around 3,200 schools and their curriculum platform programs that you're chosen to be in the top 100 globally. The Edison Award, that is for innovation. CAPS was the first, and I believe to date, the only education platform to win an innovation award. Usually the Edison Awards go to tangible innovations in technology or other type of industries.
So in CAPS, and I saw this come through today in an email, we had a school district reaching out saying, how do we get involved in your curriculum and your processes and your trainings? And it's not, I'm going to say it's not school. You know, I would relate more to almost some corporate type training is what we get into. But there is no syllabus or curriculum or that type of thing. It comes down to how do you integrate with business, which is profession-based learning. So you've heard of experiential learning, project-based learning, work-based learning. There's a bunch of dash-based learnings out there. But when you get into profession-based learning, it's integrating you into the learning. There's all these things that are out there of gaps within your hiring that you felt like, gosh, if these people knew more of how to do this. And that comes down to the professional skills, or as we are now very well adopting, is durable skills. So if you Google durable skills, there's an outfit out of Denver, America Succeeds, that reviewed 300 million job postings and started categorizing the soft skills out of those listings to see what was hiring. And it starts getting into, I think, 10 categories and 10 subcategories in this wheel. And it's critical thinking, and it's resilience, and there's problem solving and things like that. And I've given that to employers, and I said, here's this wheel. Which skill sets do you want to hire? And they circle the whole damn thing, because that's what they're looking for right now. You know, employers have said, if you're teaching them this stuff, and they're learning this stuff and practicing this stuff, I'll train them in technical stuff. You know, that's where that's at. That's going away from the education standard. Self-discovery, self-exploration. Our CAPS students will, I believe this is the only time in their day, no matter if they're a high school student. We actually have some 6th grade students that are dabbling in CAPS-like learning, that they get to learn more about themselves and where they're going and what they're involved in. And it's set aside time with purpose to do that. And then there's a mindset. And this not only is for the students, but the teachers. So educators need to have a different mindset of what learning is going to be and how you're going to interact. You know, when you look at, I always hate being on the front of the room because I don't want to be the sage on the stage. I want to be the guide on the side that's helping bring people along and engage in what they're trying to do. So it's having the mindset from that teacher when a student comes up to ask a question that the teacher actually admits, I don't know. But let's look it up together. Let's figure out who we can talk to or get connected to. And responsiveness. Markets are changing. Things are changing. Business, you have to respond. You know, the ports are shut down on the East Coast and the Gulf. How are things adapting there? Different regulations that come through. How are you adapting there? Different technologies. We just heard about AI and what that's doing. We're looking at that same stuff with our CAPS program. When you look at, you know, education in general, and when you go from, our programs usually are semester to semester, and you get these kids developed up and they're awesome. And then you go on to the next semester and you bring a whole fresh crop in. And the first year I did that, I went, this is why education doesn't change, because the customer is always changing. So you have to have standards in there that you have your systems that you're training and educating these kids. We challenge our instructors in our programs to, if it doesn't work, figure out how we're going to change it again and keep adapting and what topics are coming along. But those are the 5 core values that we live by and we present by when we get involved with our programs. But it is also the best and probably challenging thing for educators to want, because they want to know A, B, C, D, E of what all we need to do. And
Absolutely.
we have to put that mindset to do things a little bit differently when it comes to the learning and the integrating.
So as we go along and share with you about the program, we're going to share with you some real case studies. And so I don't forget, on your way out, you are free to pick up all 3 varieties of bacon zest, because you're going to hear about it. That is a high school student that invented that. He launched a company during COVID, and he's still in existence today, 4 years later. But that entrepreneurial mindset, and I'm going to use one word, we're going to come back to it again and again: failure. Okay? So I've been involved with CAPS as an industry advisor, industry mentor for 12 years. And that's been over the span of 3 different companies. So I started, actually, I worked for a company you may be familiar with called Danisco. I see an old colleague there in the audience. And that became DuPont. Then I left, took a tour of duty in pharmaceutical industry for a while. Now I'm back with Corbion. I share that with you because this from an industry perspective, this is an all boats rise. We welcome, there's no competition. In fact, competitors are our allies when you're talking about the next generation and the talent pipeline. So how this started out, there was an instructor named Joe Whalen, who I still work with today, who came to me, and honestly, it was 12 years ago, and it's before that I listened to the memory guy. I cannot remember how exactly we connected, okay? But we connected, and he said, hey, we're hearing from industry in the Kansas City area that there is a gap in the food industry. I was given your name. Can you tell me more about the talent pipeline gap? I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah. So we started talking. How many of you have heard of K-State? It's kind of like this small ag college that has a great baking science program. I say that very sarcastically. So you have K-State within 2 hours away. You have University of Missouri 2 hours away, which also has a food science program, but not as strong as K-State in baking science by far. You have Arkansas 3 hours away with a program. Nebraska, 3 hours away. Iowa, 3 hours away. We are in the epicenter of land-grant universities, and yet these kids had no idea that this industry is a career path and a great career path to get into. You have the skilled trades. We're hearing more and more and more that the skilled trades also need to attract talent. So we have the electricians that work with the engineers, so that we have plumbers, so we have HVAC. All of that is needed. So, and full disclosure, I've been on their advisory board now for 2 years, out of working with them for the past 12. The need identification just starts with the conversation. That's all it is. As we moved into the program development, I worked with Joe Whalen to develop what we call the future of foods, and it's called the Strand. In grand total, Joe came to meet with me at my office. At that time, it was at Danisco. A few times, we spent a few hours together over the course of a few months. In grand total, I think I had 10 hours of my time dedicated to Joe. He did the heavy lifting. I gave him other places to network, whether it was the retail grocery stores. There's a Chateau small dairy, family-run dairy in the Kansas City area. Working with Seaboard Foods, which is a pork producer. Working with other ingredient companies. Working throughout that entire value chain, as well as K-State, because it's all of that ecosystem that the kids need to have an exposure to. And we developed the course that we called the Future of Foods. Now here's how long it took. Joe met with me in the spring of 2013. It was the end of May, first week of June, because he started at the end of the school year. I want you to notice here, spring 2013, January 2014. He talked with people, we co-developed a curriculum and launched it in 6 months. That does not happen in education. It takes years to get your curriculum approved. 6 months. Now I'm not going to go through this whole slide, but you can see from all the loop-de-loops here, it's an iterative process. In the words of IT and digital tech, this would be known as agile. That you would get the feedback, you would iterate along the way. But 6 months from ideation to we are live with high school students.
Yeah, just to go off of instructor Joe Whalen, when you look at an instructor, and I might be generalizing here, teachers are like, they get it and this is what we're doing. So he was actually hearing from industry and hearing from community that there was this gap, and going to people to figure out how to solve the problem. And that's the responsiveness piece that comes into that core value of we're hearing this, we're evolving this, where are we going? So it's been 10, 11 years, and the ideation of what that idea was and how it evolved, it's grown quite a bit since then, and it's exposed opportunities in baking and foods and beyond to students that maybe thought they were taking it for just to be a cooking class. It sounds fun, but they discover a whole nother world. But when you look at it as it evolves, and each one of those has a professional integrated in it, and I don't exactly know the pictures, and maybe Jennifer, you do know, but students start asking questions. And when you look at that self-exploration, self-discovery piece, you have students that now are sitting in class or before they go to bed or in other classes thinking about their future. And what does that mean? And we're almost giving them permission, or we have given them permission to start asking, well, how do I get this? Or what is this? They're integrating and talking to these industry professionals. They're going on tours. They're working on projects, immersion experiences, and it's opening their mind to what else could be out there. And, we're hearing back from industry and all the circles that are there. And I know Jennifer's talked about this yesterday, the societal shifts that are happening. And she was talking last night to some people about the buying habits of your industry right now, or just I think industries as a whole, of the way people are shopping at different ages now and different income levels or geographies or how they're doing it. We want to hear that from education standpoint. So that's why it's important to have advisory board members that are true professionals that are engaged of hearing what's happening. And that takes time. You mentioned how much time it took for you to work with Joe, but you're providing that input. He could just sit there and Google it or just guess what's out there. One of my bone of contention is when teachers tell me what business thinks. And I go, well, who did you talk to? Well, I didn't talk to anybody, but that's what they heard or saw or made some assumptions on. And it's like, well, let's be partners in this. You've got your lane, we've got our lane, but let's come together to see how we can develop this for the future to help the students and a lot of times the local communities that we're getting into.
Right. So one of the things in working with the students, and you mentioned this, that, okay, things have changed in our industry, obviously, over the past 12 years. I do fundamentally believe we are in a paradigm shift, and I do believe it breaks down by generation how consumers are buying food today. Social media has an impact, technology has an impact, and because of that, the students, which by the way, I learn from them as much as they learn from me. I will go in 3 times a semester for around an hour, hour and a half. I first give them the 100,000-foot view of the food industry, very high level view, and the fact that we have many sub-industries underneath the food industry. Then we talk about their capstone project and help them develop an idea for the capstone project, which we'll give an example of later on. And then we also go in, and we'll talk later on too, about the Shark Tank that they have to present. It is through the student feedback over the years and the industry feedback and societal shifts, we've had to iterate on this program to reflect where the students are. It also gives me an opportunity every semester to demystify our industry to the students. How many of you, by raise of hands, if somebody knows what you do for a living, has maybe in a very slight way accused you of almost like secretly poisoning them through the ingredients that we have in our food? Yeah. Obviously, us in the industry have a different food source, and we're the only ones eating it. Okay, that's what I mean. The students, through what they're exposed to, have very much a one-sided view of our industry. By the time they are done in the semester, they have a completely 180-degree different view of our industry. And I will give you this. It is anywhere, just like the university programs in food science and baking science, they are struggling to get the numbers up in their programs. Sometimes Joe has 4 students in his class. Sometimes he has 14. Every single semester, and it's now been 24 semesters, all those kids walk into that class not knowing about the industry because they think they're in a cooking class. Every single semester, there has been at least 1 student who goes into food science or baking science now. And those are kids that came in to say, I'm not a science student, I'm going into business. By the end, we have at least 1. Think of the ratio, 1 out of 4, 1 out of 14. We now have 24 kids that have gone into food science or baking science, and that's 1 program. Imagine if we can scale that. Imagine what the talent pipeline would look for the baking industry if we could do that.
Just like earlier today, how many of you thought you couldn't have the memory to remember things? You know, now you get exposed to things.
Exactly. So the intersection is the science, society, and business. And this is constantly changing. So you can't have a static curriculum. So industry connections, the industry, like real you, me, they volunteer their time. And we're talking maybe 1 hour or 2 hours max in a semester. So the students, for example, have come to Corbion, gone through our labs, and are exposed to real baking scientists, real food scientists. I also know the students have visited IFF, and before that DuPont, and before that Danisco. The students will go visit, that is a extruder manufacturer on the right. Here, student driven. We talked about their capstone project. So when we built this curriculum, we actually modeled it after what we do every day at work. And this started when I used to work at Danisco. And by the way, Corbion's no different. And by the way, your business is probably no different either. Do you guys work all by yourself in a corner every day and never interact with anybody from a different department? No, that's not reality. We have cross-functional teams. Somebody who is an operations engineer has got to be talking to the scientist who is developing that product, who has got to be talking to the product manager who is responsible for the pricing and the P&L line, who has got to be talking to the head of sales who's going to go sell that product, who better be talking to somebody in regulatory and quality, who better be informing marketing what the heck they're wanting to launch so people know about it. That's life. That's how we designed this program. So the CAP school, or students in the food science strand, are free to interact with any other strand in that school. And they have an engineering strand, they have a global business strand, they have a law strand, they have an animal health strand, in addition to medicine, education, so on and so forth. The CAP students also have to have a capstone project. These students are required to develop a food product. Exhibit A. But Exhibit A that we'll tell you about, that was not his original idea. He had something completely different, and he failed and failed and failed and failed and failed, and eventually it iterated into this. So they have to develop a food product, tangible, because the Shark Tank judges have to try it out and taste it. They have to build a business plan. They have to do a break-even analysis when they're going to be profitable. They have to do a SWOT analysis, a competitor analysis. They have to have a value proposition for differentiation, how they're going to position their product. And then they have 10 minutes to pitch it, Shark Tank-like, their business plan, when they break even, have you taste their product, and then have the judges give them feedback. How many of you developed a food product in high school and wrote a business plan and did a break-even analysis and pitched to a Shark Tank? I never did that. And I didn't do it when I was in food science either, when I was in the university. But these kids are rising to the occasion.
So what happens with those experiences, I guess going back to that student-driven, a lot of times they don't know what direction they're going. Again, it goes back to the exploration piece and opening their eyes to students that are given the opportunity to start asking questions. And then the instructors, the supporters of the program are helped to kind of guide them along and see where they're going with it and support them with it. But, it's an opportunity for students to kind of just try things.
Yes.
And that's where that student-driven piece comes from.
Yes. So mentors come from across that whole value chain. And what we are saying for this strand is equal for all the other strands that they have in the program. So that's an example of how they are pitching their Shark Tank. I'm in pink. I have an industry colleague to my left. The person to the right actually owns a small business. The person right of her is actually working at the K-State Extension. So we're going to share with you a story about this student. I already told you that when he started this, he failed multiple times, and over the failure, he came up and it iterated into this product, which is nothing like what he started out with. I think he wanted to make an alternative type of mac and cheese variety, and he ended up with bacon zest, okay? That's okay. We're teaching the students that product development is messy. I actually started in the lab the first 12 years of my life, or of my career, not my life, I was not in the lab at one. The first 12 years of my career, I was in the lab, I can tell you so many times. It was through my mistakes that I learned more about the biochemistry of food and food systems, far more than what I learned out of the textbook and what was the theory. So Michael is the name of the student. When we did the evaluation in the Shark Tank, I turned to my colleague and I said, why didn't we think of this? We're in the industry. We are paid to come up with ideas. And this kid came up with something that we never thought of. It was so good. And we actually told him, you need to go talk to your mom and dad. You probably have something here. There's nothing like it on the market. And so what does he do with that when you are a senior in high school?
Who knew bacon needed seasoning?
And you know what I love about, that's on his website, by the way, and he is still in business. And when he says, where are we off to next? He actually did set up a booth at the racetrack and was selling it at the racetrack for a while to generate some attention. But did you see the last thing that he had on his video? Embrace possibilities. Michael learned that. He learned that at CAPS, to embrace possibilities. I also have never come out of a high school project or a university project starting a business. So our next example that I want to share with you is the student Jackson right up there. Aerated comments. Jackson was one of the few students who have come through the CAPS program and the Future of Food strand, and his exact words were, I'm not STEM-minded, I'm not a science kid. I'm going to go into business. I thought this was a cooking class. Jackson now is going into his third year as a food science major at the University of Arkansas when he discovered what this industry was about. So what Jackson learned, like many have learned along the way, theoretical science in a textbook, and I am a scientist by training, that can be pretty dry. When you apply the science,
that's not why he's
it comes
leaving,
to life.
That's not why he left.
Oh, because I insulted science?
Yeah.
It's applied science, and it came to life for Jackson. Now, about this aerated condiment. So you all are familiar with Ready Rip. Everybody puts it on your pumpkin pie pretty soon. Or if you're my daughter, she's 22, hides behind the refrigerator door and directly shoots it in her mouth, and I still catch her. Okay, so he took that idea, crashed the idea of aerated anything with condiments. What he developed was a buffalo chicken wing aerated condiment. And we were just like, okay. Then we tasted it. Oh my gosh. And immediately, myself and another Shark Tank judge, again, said, why didn't we think of this? Your mind goes off into, oh my gosh, this could be at sports venues. You could shoot it onto a hot dog. You can put it onto crackers. You can make a dip out of it. You could do this. You could do that. You could do this. Have you ever seen aerated condiments in the grocery store? They don't exist today. High school kid came up with it. And he also talked to a lawyer, and the only reason he had to stop is he just didn't have $30,000 laying around for a pilot plant because the technology of the can and the aeration is a bit beyond even what they could do in the CAPS program, even with the engineering students. But a high school kid came up with the idea. It does not exist in the stores today.
Because when you look at those types of experiences that students are having, whether it's making bacon zest or the aerated wing sauce or whatever, students are now engaged in school. When Jennifer asked you, were you making bacon zest or a product in school, and you're all like, I just didn't want to be there. Just trying to figure out how to move on. Students are showing up; they're engaged. So many of our programs, they are not within the high school building. They are in a separate building, or they're within an industry, and the main high school teachers get very upset because students aren't showing up for their class, but they're going to CAPS. And they are saying, well, you need to have them come here too. And the kind of consensus is, well, sounds like it's a you problem. How do you engage better with your students in your regular classes, not just with CAPS? So the CAPS is providing purpose for students that are going to school and where it's going. And when they see and get to do stuff like this, it just heightens their whole awareness of where they're going in the future.
Correct. And it does also count toward their requirements. I mean, we're talking food chemistry, physics, microbiology in these classes. We're not encouraging anybody to invent something for other people to eat and then they get sick. So that is something that the students are learning about as well. But it's also in the context of a market need. Where is that white space? So teaching them the critical thinking skills. Again, coming from the lab, there are many times we would develop something, scientifically it was really cool. It doesn't mean the market wants it. Maybe the market's not ready for it. Doesn't mean it's a bad idea. Often it's a really good idea. It could be an idea that's years before its time. So it's marrying up for them the context of the market need, the business, because we're all in businesses, and the science in order to satisfy that market need.
I'm Jenna, and I am a CAPS alumni. I graduated in 2016, and now I'm going to be a sophomore at UMKC, and I'm studying business. Honestly, it kind of over-prepared me, just because I feel like some of the things that we did at CAPS is not even offered in the college setting. We had client projects that we did, that we worked with real businesses. Having that trust and having them give me different projects within that environment is incredible. It saved me the time of doing something I don't like and then switching my major. So it saved me a lot of time and money being in the CAPS program because you can figure out what you do and you don't like. I just took advantage of those opportunities, and that's kind of where I am. That's kind of how it got me to where I am today, was just taking advantage of those opportunities and networking. And that's one thing too, is I have such a large network now just through CAPS that I could reach out to anybody and be like, oh yeah, I was in the CAPS program, I did XYZ. And the ones that know about CAPS, they know that, I mean serious business, and I already have professional experience, so I'm able to be one step ahead of someone that didn't have the CAPS experience. And that's why I feel so blessed that I was able to go through this program, because I just learned so much about, public speaking, communication skills, so many different things that you need when you are a professional. I wish I could have had more time, so sometimes I wish that I could have had another year at CAPS to do a different class.
So I think a few things I want to call out here that we've heard from students, and I'm going to go back to failure. Another story, my neighbor next door, who is now a food science major at University of Arkansas, she started out wanting to go into nursing. She went through the CAPS program. They have a nursing strand. And she came over one day because when she was a senior, she would help us out with our animals when we went away for the weekend. And I asked her, I said, hey, Haley, I go, how's the nursing strand at CAPS? I go, you enjoying it? She's like, Mrs. Lindsay, no. And I said, why the glum face? I go, that's fantastic. And she looked at me like, what is wrong with you? I just told you, no, I'm not enjoying it, and you're celebrating it. I said, because it's far more important for you to explore at this age and realize that's not what you want, than for you to go to the university, get 2 years in, now you've spent this money, might as well just suck it up and keep going forward and go into a career that you really aren't excited about. So she toured Corbion. She could have easily toured any of your companies. I talked to her a few times about what the industry's like, and she switched her major. There are so many kids like that. I shared with you at the beginning, I was going to go to medicine because that's one of the 5 careers pathways that all kids hear about in high school. And I fell into this industry. So, the other related strands over there, and there are many more. Future of Foods is just the one that we're sharing with you. Engineering, probably the most ubiquitous strand that they have across all the CAPS networks. Global business, animal health, and the last one is fill in the blank. Where's the gaps in your industry, at your company, in your community? Because right across here, and Nate, you could probably share what is going to be the 25th state that is not colored in yet, that will be colored in.
Yeah, you know, there's opportunities out there that we just don't know about. I wanted to piggyback quick on, you know, your neighbor that said that. You know, in the Cedar Falls, Iowa program, we have a teacher ed program there. Student went through the program on a pathway to be a teacher and realized she didn't like kids. Well, let's go ahead and switch that then. But she wanted to be involved in education. She liked that industry. That's what she had an interest in. You know, it's helping students figure out pathways they don't know that are out there. So Jennifer and Jill were actually in San Diego about a year ago at the protein conference or
yes,
something
it was
like
NAMI, but now the Meat Institute.
Meat
they
Institute.
They rebranded, yes.
So Jennifer's going to go through some slides here as we've geo-matched different people that are in attendance at this conference to where we have affiliates across the country. Old Trapper Beef Jerky, anybody familiar? So Old Trapper Beef Jerky is based up in Forest Grove, Oregon, just across the border, just west of Portland. Ole Everson, family business that started selling smoked meats out in the woods. They were a family that I think rented hunting cabins or something like that, but they were looking for something else to supplement the income, and they started smoking beef jerky. So he reached out and wanted to know more about CAPS. So as I'm talking through it, just like we are of these experiences and these stories with kids, he goes, I want to get involved. And he was looking at, how do we get a project? I always want to try and get a company involved with a project. And what's a project? And it's, all of us in this room, you have number 8, 9, and 10 on your to-do list that usually stays there. It might be a personal project or your department or your company, but it's always there because you don't have the time or the resource to get to it. Those are the projects we want to get into. So I know he has one right now that he's actually doing remote with the Blue Valley District CAPS on upgrading their social media, especially on Instagram, to expose beef jerky products to a younger audience. So he came out and he goes, I'm going to come see you guys in 2 weeks. Oh, okay. So he flew out. He tied it with another meeting. He walked our building at Blue Valley. That's a separate CAPS building. And where we thought he really wanted to see the food science and the future of foods area, he was enamored with our robotics team and what they were doing there, because his need right then was automation and systems he was putting as far as automation with packaging and filling the product. And he said, okay, I want this. I want this in Forest Grove, Oregon. He goes, because I've got a grandson that should be in this when he gets to high school. So I went out there and took him to visit Ridgefield, Washington, which is just across the border into Washington, to see that program, and got a tour, Old Trapper Beef Jerky. And, he was somebody that was just sitting in an audience and saw the opportunity, sees the big picture. It's a long play to see where we can evolve to get them integrated. But it's, that's a state that we're probably going to be filling in here anytime soon. We're not out here to fill in the map necessarily. We've had this conversation of, well, how many programs should we have? How many states should we fill? Yes, we want every student to have this type of experience, and it's going to come out soon. We've got funding over 3 years to try and engage middle school students. And there's a gap right now that middle school students aren't really exposed to career pathways to start thinking about. Should they make a choice at 7th grade that they're going to get into food science or construction or whatever? No. But if they don't know and start thinking about it, that's where this is going to come in. And by the time they come through a middle school program and into one of our high school programs, you know, I can't even fathom what that's going to be like for those students as we get them ready for the world to move on forward. When you look at the strands, many of ours are now evolving. We've got some funding to expand into rural Kansas. So Kansas, you see more dots. How do we do this in rural Kansas? So we're in Osborne, Kansas. The average the graduating class, I think, is 22. And they have some business, they have some industry. We're in Dodge City, Kansas. I was there 2 weeks ago. You know, got to sit near the Wyatt Earp statue and Buffalo, or not Wild Bill or whoever it was, but it's like, you know, that's where they were driving cattle up through there. There's industry and they're already doing some things. It doesn't matter how remote, how urban, how small the school is, or how big the school is. There's opportunities to get these students immersed in actually what becomes a workforce retention program. And you're exposing students, their friends, their teachers, and we have found their parents to opportunities that are happening within the community. They had no idea what was happening there and what opportunities were there. So, you know, that's the power of what this can happen to be is integrating business within education to create opportunity.
Correct. You mentioned Dodge City, different food industry, but they have a Cargill plant there where they harvest beef and cattle. They're having a worker retention issue in that community. So they're starting to have conversations for how do we start to expose the opportunities in the industry, but also retain the workforce in that community.
Because some of these smaller ones, and I guess this is where I go on it, I got derailed on it, but a Dodge City or an Osborne can't have the 8 different strands like we have in Blue Valley.
No.
So there's an all-encompassing strand that you get into that somebody sees food science, somebody sees carpentry, somebody sees cybersecurity, somebody sees this. That's where then we set them up to, again, where students lead, to try and support who we can get connected to offer connections. We had got somebody in Osborne, Kansas, had a 35 ACT. She's been through every math class and science class she's bored, but has an interest in cybersecurity. We've got her connected now to, I think it's a cybersecurity firm in Salt Lake City because of a connection we have through our network. And now that girl gets to virtually connect in with somebody to have a career conversation and a career discovery meeting with somebody in that profession to see, is that a pathway she wants to get into that she doesn't have in Osborne, Kansas.
Correct. So now we're going to show, this is just for illustrative purposes only. This is cold, none of you guys knew we were going to do this, but we went ahead and took the attendee list.
If you see your company, raise your hand.
Yeah, I'm not sure, you might see your company. So it was random, so we took the attendee list, just took the company names, identified the headquarters, you may have manufacturing across the US, and then we geolocated with where they are in CAPS programs within a 1-hour driving distance. So Kansas City has 6 CAPS programs within a 1-hour driving distance of these 3 companies. So I can tell you, because I happen to be one of those people in Kansas City, obviously I work with the CAPS program, but I know there's people at IFF, which are some old colleagues of mine that also work with the CAPS program in the same program that we just shared with you. We know there are some baking companies that will go and visit with the kids. K-State visits with the kids. Entrepreneurs visit with the kids. Dairy professionals visit with the kids.
So we've got like 8 minutes. So.
Yep. Partnership here, so Minneapolis also has 6 programs within a 1-hour driving distance of these companies. 2 are within a 1-hour driving distance of Kane Foods. Aspire, Otis Spunkmeyer, Little Debbie's. You have 1. Gold medal. There's 1. But the point is, and we talked about this before, it just starts with conversation. So however, if you choose to leverage this, we've told you the network already exists. We could geolocate with 115 schools across the US and growing. We've already proven out the proof of concept. It is flexible. If it is something you're interested in, let's just have a conversation. It could just be, hey, I want to just have a conversation and just see where this goes. Could also be tap into an existing program. Few hours is all it will take. Volunteer some time to be a mentor or a coach, or go in and just create awareness of the industry and what your role is with the students. And what if, let's be bold, what if, as an industry, we come together, and the trade organizations are the perfect forum for that we would go ahead and do the all boats rise, or what did you say?
All bread rises is what I wanted to say, but she told me no.
I did tell him no, but anyway, all boats, all bread rises, okay? What if we choose, as an industry, to geolocate just 5 or 10 schools that already exist? We can pick where they are in proximity to existing businesses who are willing to put in a few hours. And what if we build out a bakery-centric program, baking science, engineering, the trade orgs, supply chain, any of those, and we test it out and pilot it because it's an iterative process. Imagine if you do 5, then 10, then 15, then 20. You don't have to do all 115 because it's going to keep growing anyway. They're already expanding across the nation. Could you imagine if we just had, at some point in time, let's just pick a number, 20 schools that had baking-centric industry programs? Think what your feeder would be into the trades, your feeder would be into the land-grant universities, and then the feeder you're creating into the industry. That's what we're talking about.
Because right now, the way it's integrated, it's you see the training on the technical skills. So, foundationally, you look at any level that you've been hiring, and you're probably looking at their durable skills. There's an article that came out that I can share with you if you shoot me an email, but companies are firing new grads after hiring them because they're not coming out ready. There's some attitude issues. There's all sorts of problems. So you have companies now saying, how about I'll hire somebody who's got a few more years of experience. My thought, and I believe this, if you're going to hire somebody who's a new grad but has gone through a CAPS experience and they've got that foundation, you heard that young lady speak. She's a sophomore in college. She shows up, she's ready to go. She's gone through project management skills. She understands Agile. She understands how to have a connection, take notes in a meeting, show up on time, dress professionally. What that means, that sounds like so small, but it's a foundation for that learning and that engagement. So that's what CAPS gives.
Yes. So again, Nate, if you are interested, is your contact person, or if you want to have a conversation with me, this is a passion project of mine, obviously. We believe we have an opportunity to leverage what already exists. We as an industry do not have to build this, it's built. All we have to do is have a conversation and potentially tap into it. And we would welcome getting more like-minded people to leverage this. Let's test it out.
So if you see Nate, you see bald, and then you see pool ball.
And then attach that to your couch in your living room.
That's what you can now think of.
Yeah, so Nate's the couch in your living room.
Okay.
If you found this helpful or get your mind going, again, we'd love to have a conversation, but please share it because we would love to share it with more people.